Also, so thank you so much everyone for being here tonight. I'm really excited. We're kicking off the MyTutor Careers Festival this evening. So we've got 2 weeks of free events, both careers and university events. It's been so hard to meet people, to network, to kind of get a sense of what your options are for the future. So these kind of 2 weeks of online events should be a really fun and kind of hopeful way for you to get a sense of all the options that you have there for building your future. And so, yeah, let's get started. So I'll just give a little intro for everyone, and then you can each tell us more about yourself. So we've got Daisy Jacobs here, who's the co-founder of Roots, which is a really amazing social enterprise. James Grant here is a co-founder of MyTutor, and he founded the MyTutor Schools program, which helps hundreds of thousands of kids over the years, giving them free tuition through government funding. We've got Lena Gardi here, who I can't remember how long your company's been going, who runs her own hair care product company for Black men. And we've got Tim Armu here, who's also a serial entrepreneur and currently runs Fan Bites, which is a youth influencer agency. Really excited to have all of you here. If we had a real life event, we'd all have a big round of applause right now. So each of you, I've just given a kind of little intro. Could each of you just tell us a little bit more about yourself and like how you became an entrepreneur? So starting with Daisy.
Sure. Hey, so my name's Daisy and I run a social enterprise called Roots, which I founded at the end of 2017. And as an organisation, we exist to support women who have experience of seeking safety in the UK. So people who are asylum seekers at the moment or who have refugee status. And we exist to provide support in accessing employment, education, confidence building and community building as well. And I'm sure I'll speak a bit more later about where it was built from. But as well as that, we have a number of different programs, one of which is a mentoring program that connects women from refugee and asylum seeking backgrounds with professional women working across sectors who want to not only support someone else on their own kind of personal or professional development journey, but also to develop their own leadership skills through one of our training programs. I can say a bit more about that later. Is there anything else that would be useful for me to mention, Marietta?
No, that's wonderful, thank you. And James, tell us a bit more about yourself.
I'm James Grant. I'm co-founder of MyTutor, and hopefully many of you have come across MyTutor, but we are the leading online platform for high quality and engaging tuition. And we work with inspiring university students to deliver that. And we have kind of two models to what we do. One is where we provide to families who can afford tuition, and they can go on our platform and directly find a tutor and work with them. Or we work directly with schools, so we partner with them and deliver these kind of larger programs for a bunch of their students who are struggling to progress and are often from disadvantaged backgrounds. And I got into entrepreneurship many years ago, initially as a DJ, and I'm sure we'll discover a little bit more about that part of my life. But I've kind of always run little businesses, and MyTutor's the largest one that I'm working on at the moment.
Awesome. And Lena.
Hi, yeah, so I'm Lena, and I'm one of the co-founders of Aaron Wallace, which is a male grooming brand specifically catered towards Black men. So what we do is formulate products that help Black men take better care of their hair, of their beard, and of their skincare as well.
Awesome. And Tim.
Hey, I'm Tim. Timo is the name that I'm going with, so Timo. Yeah, so I currently am the founder and CEO of Fan Bites, and what we do is we help brands like McDonald's, Apple, even the government. We help them to reach younger consumers on social media. How I came to business. So my first ever business, this is kind of like an inception moment where my first ever business was a tutoring business. When I was like 14, started that business and then started a second business. And Fanbytes now is Fanbytes is my third business, which is by far the biggest so far. So yeah, that's how I came into the game.
Awesome. So on that note, actually, how about Daisy, Lena, and James? I don't know, Daisy and Lena, did either of you found businesses before this one? Like, what was the first venture that you ever started? Was it like a lemonade stand or something bigger? Daisy, how about you go?
Sure. Yeah, the first business that I started in an official sense of like incorporating a company was when I was at university. And similarly to what I do now, it was born out of an insight that I had into the fact that where I was at university, which was in Bristol, 3 communities that I saw and was in some ways a part of were really disconnected. So there was the professional arts community. I studied French and theatre, and I worked in lots of different theatres and arts institutions in Bristol, and realised that the professional arts scene was really disconnected from the university, and that the university was really disconnected from local communities, especially of local schools, for example. And so I founded what I felt was a project, but actually turned into a bit more of an official business that aimed to connect all 3 of those different communities through a programme of drama workshops that were run in arts institutions in Bristol by university students for local schools. And I did it because, I did it by myself because I felt like it was an important thing to do, and I rallied a group of people around me who also believed that it was an important thing to do, and we got some funding from the university and a bit of money from ticket sales and other bits and pieces. I've never been the best at the finance side, which I think is often why I've kind of lent to work that can both be income generating. So for example, in that instance, ticket sales, and also grant funded because of, I guess, the social aspect of the work that it's doing. But yeah, that was my first. And I think at the time I was 21. Lena, how about you?
My first business was either year 9 or year 10. So I had learned how to do hair. My sister knew how to do hair, and my cousin knew how to do hair. Me and my sister went to the same school, and my cousin went to a different school. So I thought, why don't all 3 of us get together, print out a flyer, hand it out in all our respective schools, and start doing mobile hairdressing. So we did that for about 6 months. Didn't make a lot of money because the pricing structure was completely off. But it was loads of fun, and my parents at the time decided that we had to shut it down because it was taking us away from doing our actual schoolwork. But that was the first time I started a business with my sister and my cousin.
Amazing. And James, what was your first one? I feel like you have so many. I don't know what your actual first one.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost a bit embarrassing because so the other night we had like a after work drinks with some of the team, and we were I basically had on my desk I've got all the business cards I've ever had, and it's like, I think it was something like 20. I used to just like have an idea, and the first thing I used to do is create a business card for it before I even launched the company. But I like the first real business I had, I wanted to be a mobile DJ. I wanted to do club nights and birthday parties and weddings and stuff like that. And to save up for equipment, I started a little car wash thing with my friend who I was going to DJ with. So we spent the summer basically washing cars, knocking on doors, trying to sell, like, can we wash your car? These like little 11-year-old kids who would probably do more damage than it's worth. But that was my first foray into business, and we kind of saved up for our first piece of equipment and started DJing, which I ended up doing for about 13 years.
Wow. And so you started a business in order to fund your other business. That's very double whammy.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably generous to say business, but like we washed cars, we knocked on doors, we tried to hustle a little bit, but it was some character building. Like I really enjoyed it and learned some stuff for it that I could take forward.
Yeah, would you also? Yeah. Sorry.
Really quickly and comment on what James has just said. I think that's such a valid thing, that the word business can confuse or cloud things, because actually being entrepreneurial doesn't necessarily mean starting up a business in all the traditional ways that we might think of what a business is. Like there are so many different entry points, and there are so many different experiences of what it can feel like to do that. So yeah, it was useful hearing that, because even me, then I was reflecting all the instances when I was younger where I definitely was entrepreneurial, but I wouldn't have looked at myself and been like, man, I'm starting a business. So I think that's definitely such a valid thing to point out as well.
Yeah, like Daisy, when did you first kind of realize that all these ventures that you did were like, did kind of make you, like, made you a social entrepreneur? When did you first hear the term?
I did a lot of volunteering, so in 2015 I spent quite a lot of time between Calais and Athens, where there was in Calais specifically, there was a very large refugee camp, which you might have heard about, that was just on the border. It was huge, and there was almost no kind of state or government support, and it was all the gaps in terms of people getting essential items were being plugged by volunteers and grassroots organizations, and it was similar in Athens as well. And so I think it was volunteering there that I realized that all of these amazing initiatives were relying on volunteers and were relying on donations. And that was really fragile, because if people stopped going out and volunteering or stopped giving donations, there was no support there at all. And so I looked into social enterprise as a way of trying to develop some more sustainable solutions to some of those issues, because if you're able to sell a product or a service, you don't have to rely on the kind of whim of someone else, of a grant funder giving you money, or on that cycle of collecting donations. And so that was the first time that I thought, hey, maybe this is something that I could do and look into. But it was really born out of that. I don't know that I before that necessarily thought of myself as an entrepreneur, but then maybe I did.
Yeah, I guess with all of you, with these really early ventures, you all like recognized kind of problems to be solved. Would you say that's right? And like thought of a solution and brought it to people. Is that, is that like an overgeneralization that that's kind of what you do with any of your ventures that you've ever done?
So my first ever thing was a tutoring business. I don't think that I thought about it as problems to be solved. I think it was, so I started it because I had a bet with a friend of mine. And at 14, he bet me that I wouldn't see £500 before I turned 18. And at that age, you know, someone said £500, you're like, yo, this is like 5 million. So actually the thing that sparked the tutoring thing was I went online to search the term make money online. And this was about 10 years ago. When you search make money online, it's just a bunch of people in like Ferraris and Lamborghinis, and be like, if you pay me $999 a month, I will make you, I don't know, 10 million. But the whole point is that I don't have 999 at that point. But the thing which I did learn was this phrase, is work with what you know. And on that day, I realized I was quite good at maths, and because we'd done a math test and I got the highest score. So actually that was the way that I ended up starting the business, which was I went the next day to start tutoring people maths. And then people started coming to me for like physics and chemistry and all that stuff. And then I went to the teachers of those particular subjects and I said, just tell me who was the smartest person in your class. And then they tell me, then I just go to that person and say, yo, do you want to make money? And so I would be the connector between the two. So I don't think in that particular front, it was solving the problem, but I actually think it was one of the big things. If I was starting, so in hindsight, I think it was actually this idea of most people, they have these set of skills, which doesn't come naturally to other people. And especially when you're young, or especially when you're starting off, the skills are the only thing you have, and you can basically turn those particular skills into a business. So there are specific things which are very obvious to you, like they're just so obvious to you. But if you were to explain it to someone, they'll be like, what? Those things are actually things you can build. You can build projects off. You can build businesses off, because people would pay for that value, right? Like people would pay for that skill set being applied. So that's a very good framework that I have like my little cousins and stuff, and if they're trying to think about business, I'll go, just get a sheet of paper and just write, like, what are you good at? And you'd find there's so many things which you are good at, and if they are at the intersection of I'm good at them and people are willing to pay for them, you can pretty much just like rinse and repeat. Just do that for this, do that for that, do that for that. That's if you want to start like a business, which is like a small business that's kind of doing its thing, growing and growing and growing. Of course, when you get bigger, then it's a whole different set of skills. But to actually start off, things that you're naturally good at and that people will pay for, could be a very strong recipe without sometimes looking for the problems to start off with. Almost think about what you're good at first.
Yeah, it sounds quite similar to your first venture as well, Lena. Like you were good at hair with your family, and you kind of based your first business off like what you were really good at. Which was there anything else, any other elements to that?
Not really. I think for us, when we were in year 9 and year 10, a lot of girls, I went to a girls' school, and a lot of us were doing each other's hairs because we couldn't afford to go to the hairdressers. So I guess I was inadvertently solving a problem, but that wasn't my driving factor. My driving factor was I wanted to make some spare change. My mum wasn't giving me enough pocket money. I know how to do hair. My sister knows how to do hair. My cousin knows how to do hair. Let's market that and pull together our resources in that respect and build a business. But at the same time, we had all these fellow students in year 9 and 10 who couldn't afford to do their hair. And so we were coming in with cheaper solutions. So I guess we solved their problem in that way, but it was more driven by the fact that we wanted to make money.
Yeah.
Can I ask, like, when you started making the money, like, was there a rush from the money itself, or was there also something else that kind of the things gave you, like when you were tutoring Tim and when you were doing hair, Lena? Because for me, like, there's also something inherent in like being enterprising that almost builds confidence. Like you feel it's quite exciting. There's a freedom to it. And I'm just wondering, like, even though the initial trigger was money, like how did that develop for you? Like what is that now, for example?
Well, I can say at the time, I got a rush from seeing something that we had put together or created. In that case, it was just a flyer. But it was just so exciting to get these random phone calls and text messages. I've seen your flyer. I would really like to get my hair done. That then became my rush. But we weren't making a lot of money because we didn't factor in travel and marketing expenses into our pricing structure, and the fact that our primary consumers couldn't afford a lot. So we weren't making a lot of money, to be honest. But with the business now, what drives me is not the money that we're making, but I know it sounds silly to think that you're making a difference with hair care products, but we actually are. There's so many Black men that come to us and say, I didn't have a product before that did this for me, or I didn't feel represented in this space. And so now the driving factor and the rush for me is that difference that we're making.
Yeah, I'd say for me, so for me, it did start off with money. I was poor and I didn't like being poor. So I just figured that I'll solve that problem. But I think it actually, after a while, I think it became a bit more of a game. And by what I mean is, I find business to be one of the most interesting things where like your inputs more or less lead to like some kind of output. So it's like, if I do this, this will happen. And then you end up being in this almost game where you go, well, what if I do this or do this or do this? And that bit is quite exciting. It's almost as if sometimes I explain this to people. I don't know how many people here play Sims, but it's almost like you're playing Sims with your life. Like you're kind of going, okay, if I do this, how much can it impact this? And what if I do this and do that and do that? And I think that then has now become the thrill of it all. And I think at the beginning, probably, especially if you're thinking about starting a business or in the first inning, the odds are, and maybe this is not what people would want to hear, but I'm just gonna free the realness for you. The odds are the business will probably fail, which is completely fine, because the point is, like, it's a skill. As you get better and better and you learn this here and you learn this here and you learn this here, I think sometimes, as especially this was me, like starting my second business, I was quite young. I was like 17 then, and like everything I read was like, this guy starts his business and builds $1 billion company, and I'm like, oh my god, I cannot be this guy. Like, he is just so much smarter than me. But then I kind of came to change my perspective on the whole thing, which was that actually business is this thing of you're constantly learning and you're constantly doing things wrong and you're constantly doing things right. And I think that's the thrill there, which is, it is almost like a game show where you're almost going, okay, let me try this, let me try that. So I think, you know, in being enterprising, in starting a business, I know it can seem like, am I ready? Am I blah, blah. And I have found that the best thing was just almost going, well, do you know what? This thing's probably going to fail, but I'm going to learn a ton in it. And then the next thing I do, I'm going to not do the first things I did. And that one will probably fail, but to a lesser extent. And then the third one is the one where you go, oh, well, this was completely stupid. And then, and then you find out that, probably by business 6, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, this makes sense now. So that is,
I think it's a really important point you're touching on, which is that when I started one of my businesses, my co-founder at the time, it didn't work out with him, and I think the reason was he just was like, he had a belief in his head that we'd reach a point, like we'd work really hard, and then there'd be a moment in the business's history, maybe 6 months down the line, where it goes from like this, hockey, like massively like up and to the right, and it didn't happen. And he missed a really valuable lesson, which is that everything's like super incremental. Like, you read about these hockey sticks, but even in the hockey sticks, there's like incremental, like little bit by bit, like lots of effort. So, and it's also not straight. It's like down and up and down and up. And it's so much resilience required and so much persistence to actually get anywhere. And like, I'm wondering, Daisy, have you kind of had those ups and downs, or has it been like a fairly straight path for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think before I touch on that, I wanted to pick up on something that everyone has mentioned about the skills. So finding something that you're good at and monetizing it, and also about this idea of just giving it a go. And I think what maybe hasn't necessarily been mentioned is the fact that that doesn't always happen alone. Like Lena's story about doing it with your sister and your cousin, like, it's so valuable also to mention that you don't have to have all the skills yourself. You don't have to have all the knowledge yourself. You don't have to have the resilience to go through all of those challenges and hurdles and failures yourself. It's such a valuable thing to look around you and be like, right, who's around me and what skills do they have? Like, I'm terrible with finance and like accounting and like all that financial management, but my co-founder is brilliant at it and we work really well together. And when I was, in fact, before I started the business I mentioned earlier, a friend and I think we're in our first or second year of uni, we really needed some money. My waitressing job wasn't working out for me in terms of the money that I was making, and we realized I had a background in teaching drama, she had a background in teaching singing, and another one of our friends had a background in teaching dance, and they lived in Leeds, and there was a venue that wasn't super expensive, and we set up a summer school for kids who wanted to learn acting, singing and dancing, and we ran it for 3 days, and then we did it again the next holiday, and then we did it again the next holiday, and we were learning as we were going. But there was no way I could have done that by myself at all. I didn't have the connections. I'm not from Leeds, can't sing or dance to save my life. Like, it was massively a group effort. And I think we often see these stories of entrepreneurs who made it to the top, and you just see the one name, but actually there's so much value in looking around you and being like, right, who could I go on this journey with? And like James said, it doesn't always work out. You don't necessarily see things in the same way or have the same visions of where you're going, but especially in taking the first step. And I think I saw, it's jumping ahead maybe, but in the Q&A, someone mentioning something about confidence, like absolutely bringing other people along with you and tapping into the resources that are around you is such an important thing in navigating those ups and downs, and sharing knowledge and networks and resources. And don't feel like you have to have it all or plow ahead on your own on a journey like this, because it can be really lonely, and taking that first step can be really scary, especially if you feel like you've got a lot to lose. And again, I guess on a practical note, I think managing it, or like thinking about entrepreneurship as something that is going to pay the bills from the beginning is like often wildly unrealistic. And the idea that actually if you share the load out, it enables you to also work another job, for example, if that's what you want to do, or also be doing your studies and be able to share that out. So yeah, wanted to touch on that.
Yeah, so I guess as well as what Tim said about recognizing what you are good at, also recognizing what you're not good at and partnering with people who do have those skills which you don't, perhaps. Like Lena, how have you found being a co-founder for Aaron Wallace, and like how have you kind of divided your skills between your in your partnership?
So I mean, Aaron is a barber by trade, and so he is incredibly knowledgeable when it comes to Afro hair, Afro skin. He has spoken to, I mean, being a barber, you're constantly speaking to your clientele. So this is something he knows inside out, like literally like the back of his hand. And so he leads our product formulation and anything to do with new product development, that's all him. I've been working in sales since I was 16 years old because I talk a lot. So sales was like a natural job for me, if that makes sense. And I've done so many different sales jobs in so many different settings, and I've learned so much from doing sales jobs. And a lot of that is just relationship building and networking and that kind of stuff. And that then helped with my marketing as well as having a marketing background. So those are the two skills that we already had between the two of us. But there was also a lot of learning. So skills that we were missing in the business, we just went to learn. There's so many resources online, there are blogs, there are webinars, especially now during lockdown, so many webinars so many seminars that usually cost a lot of money to attend, completely free to join online. There are courses, there are YouTube videos, there's an abundance of resources that we've used to upskill. So where we're missing in skills, we've had no choice but to learn it. Because unfortunately, when you start a business, you just don't have the big budgets to hire a bunch of people to do everything. So a lot of it is just you saying to yourself, if I don't have the skill in-house, I'm going to learn it myself. I've got no choice but to do that. And then also I'm very much, I love networking. I love meeting people. And that's helped us build a small, I wouldn't say we're a big team, but a very small team with different skill sets that we're each bringing to the table. And all of that has just been through networking, going to events, speaking to people, being on LinkedIn, being on social media, on Twitter, wherever the case may be. And that's also helped us bring some more skills to the table that we were missing initially.
Classic on mute moment. That's the first time I've ever done that. Would you say from all of this talk about kind of like working out what your skills are, partnering with people with the right skills, would you say that there are any kind of really core characteristics of successful entrepreneurs, or would you say they're all just really different?
So when people get asked this question, often they talk about having to be risky, right? So risk taken. And from what I understand, the people in this audience, so we have some GCSE, A-level, and people in university, right? You are risking absolutely nothing. And I'll explain that. So one of the things so at Fanbase, we currently are 50, 58 people or something. And one of the things I noticed looking through people's CVs and all that stuff is the best people that we've ever hired are people who actually started something somewhat entrepreneurial when they were younger. And what it's given them, and yeah, you know, it didn't work out for whatever reason, but then again, so remember the first thing I said, which is the odds are it's probably not going to work out. Is when you end up like starting a business when young, even if things go badly, you don't actually lose much, because you know, like you don't have kids, you don't have a mortgage, like you don't have the things which are on a lot of people's minds. So the downside is that you end up picking up a bunch of skills, you end up picking up a bunch of experiences, but even better, you actually end up generally being more employable in the long run. I have I've given jobs to people who haven't even gone to university, way over people who have, because I've gone, this person has tried 3 different things. They've tried a clothing line, they've tried a makeup business, they've tried this business, and actually all the different skills they've learned have been have helped them to get to this stage. One of our best employees is 22 and she's just been trying different businesses. She came to join and she's just absolutely like going for it, hustling. And we've promoted her, I think, 4 times in the last year. But like just because she's just gotten that entrepreneurial skill. So I think one thing that's very key is, again, sometimes we read these publications and all that stuff and you go like, you have to be great with risk and all that stuff. I'm like, yeah, I get that if you're like a 40-year-old person who has like 6 kids, right? But if you're a young person, there's absolutely no actual downside to this game. In terms of the attributes, I saw someone's question and it actually brought me to what I always say. So one of the things I think the attributes you need is to be just insanely curious. So one of my favorite rappers is Jay-Z, and he has a quote where he says, "History doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes." Now, some people say that quote is from Mark Twain, but I heard it from Jay-Z, so is Jay-Z. And the whole point is like, pretty much everything you've been trying to do has been done by someone else. Even if you're trying to build rockets to go to space, like they've been done by someone else. And so actually, when I talk about curiosity being so key, it's because what you want to do is to try and figure out how they've done it, and that's through books, that's through videos, that's through just like seeking these people out and just asking them, and figuring out how they did it. And I think books are 100% such a cheat sheet, basically. Like people have done what you want to do and they're basically saying, this is how I did it, and all you have to do is read it and just do that. So for me, this idea of just being like insanely curious like has been perhaps the one biggest attributes as a young person. I would 100% say just like constantly thinking someone has done this before, I just need to figure out how they've done it and just do it. That to me is
I think that applies beyond industry as well. Like it's within a business, like any business like will go through like tons of phases. Like as you grow and develop, you're learning brand new skills for the first time. Yeah. And like, yes, some people have done 10 businesses and sold 10. It happens, and it's like always the front cover of a newspaper. But the reality is, like Tim says, most businesses fail. And like in MyTutor, for example, it was the first kind of business that I ever really raised money for. And we've now got a like growing team. And my role, I'd say, changes about 3 times a year. Like I've had to learn new skills around fundraising, around selling, around like how to encourage progression in the team and mentor people, marketing, like just so many different functions, even like product development and tech. And like, I am not an expert in any of these things. I would never claim to be, but part of it is around adapting to your environment and learning as you go along. And part, you know, you can use books, you can speak to people who've done it before, you can read articles. And then the other part of it, which is like a brilliant hack, is just hiring someone better than you. So like taking a role that you need filling and finding someone who just like, you can see in them that they are going to be much better than you in this thing. And that will take you to another level. That will take your business to another level. So like one of the skills, I think, so I don't want to repeat what Tim said, because I think Tim's made great points, but like, I think it's like spotting in other people, like something that's better than yourself in a particular area, in a specialist area as you grow. And if you've got that superpower to like see something in people and bring them along the journey, sell them the vision, get them really bought in and loyal, and reward them for it, then that can kind of be the difference between failing and succeeding in a business.
Can I jump in and pick up a little bit on curiosity as one of the key features as well? Just because I think what Tim mentioned about curiosity is totally right, and reading and accepting that people are going to have done it before, and looking at the ways in which they did well and didn't do. But I think that curiosity is also really valuable for people maybe who don't have an idea. You might feel entrepreneurial inside, and you might know that that's what you want to do, but we don't all like wake up one morning and think, oh, this is it. And actually curiosity really comes into play there, because I think the most important thing is deep listening and asking questions and connecting with people and listening to people and looking around and being curious about what's going on. And that's how you'll find the thing. It's not all about introspection and thinking, what am I good at? But it's also about looking outwards and looking at what's needed, or what's already going on, or what's working really well, and how you can get involved. And so I think curiosity and listening and observation is really valuable there as a quality. Like, I don't think you don't have to have the idea already, you don't have to have it inside you, but asking good questions and seeking out insight is a really valuable starting point, and I think a really key quality for someone who wants to embark on a journey of starting up something.
Yeah, that's also key. So I just want to touch on that. That's also key. Like, your idea does not have to be original. Like, I have never had an original idea in my whole life, like ever, right? All my, like, every single thing I've done has been, oh, this works here. Let me just figure out how this can work for like this group of people. The world is so huge that like there are people who would just serve a particular demographic with something, right? Like, you see something working here for men, you go, okay, I wonder how this works for women. Or you see something working for, I don't know, like dogs, so you go, well, how would it work for cats, right? So they sometimes also, I think we get very stuck with thinking about, what is this idea, and again, it comes back to the press and all that stuff that we read, right? Where some guy was in his bedroom and then he thought, I have this idea to transform the way the world works. It's like, no, you didn't, mate. Like, no, you didn't. So one of the things I think that's so key, especially as a young person, is this idea of like not fall into the fallacy of the great idea, which absolutely transforms the world. Like, actually starting from, I'm going to do this small thing for just this small group of people, and they're going to love it so much. And then I'm like going to expand to more people and more people. It's such a great, that's the framework, which if I was thinking as someone who was starting a business, that's the framework I would go for. Because otherwise you then start to try and like, you start to try and mentally compare yourself to like Zuckerberg or Elon Musk, and it's like, oh, you know, Musk is this guy and I'm just this person and I don't have any ideas. And it's like, well, actually, most of the case, business is a very like simple thing of, there's a group of people who have this thing and I'm going to help them in this way, and I'm just going to keep doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it, and then I'll build a team around it, they'll keep doing it, a bigger team, they'll keep doing it, but it all starts with like a small group of people first.
Awesome. And if anyone, if they haven't got a pen to write down all these great things everyone's saying, we'll be showing the recording of this webinar afterwards, so you can get all this advice again. I've just got one more question before we take it to the questions from the audience. So a lot of entrepreneurs often wonder, like, when is the right time to set up my business, or if they've got a side hustle or an idea, like when is the right time to just go for it and give more of my time to this? I know like both James and Lena, like you both started with side hustles. Could you like advise our audience, like how do you know the right moment to step out and more into your own business?
I can try and talk about it from a couple of angles, because for me, like the earlier entrepreneurial ventures were never meant to be like these world-beating kind of big unicorn ideas. So DJing for me was, I loved music, I particularly loved hip hop, and I wanted to play it at parties and try and earn some money out of it. And I knew that when it came to, you know, when I was sort of 18, 19, I'll probably give it up. And I went on a little bit longer than that and did events through university. So I sort of expanded it a little bit beyond where it was. But MyTutor was the first business where I thought about it in much bigger terms. I thought, this is a real problem that, you know, university students leave university with tons of debt. The tutoring world is very unfair because only people with money can afford it and access it when everyone deserves to access it. And you can marry the two problems where university students, these talented people, can give back and also earn money and pay off their debts at a cheaper rate than what most agencies were charging for tuition. So like that was the idea. And then the next stage was thinking about, right, I had this job. I was in the chief of staff team at Barclays. It was like a grad job in the corporate world. And I really knew from day one that I wanted to be running a business. But at what point do you jump? Like, at what point do you take a risk? And I get what Tim was saying about risk, but at the time I just got a mortgage and like I had some bills to pay. It wasn't a huge risk, but I had some risk to take. And I decided that it would be the moment where I got some initial funding. So I'd put some of my own money into the business. I'd won some grants and stuff like that, and business competitions. But to really give it a go, to become this big company, I'd need to raise some money. So side of the desk, I started pitching to investors, like everyone I knew. I got introductions to like investment funds through friends who were also running businesses. I cold emailed people and just like built up like a bit of a sales funnel. And eventually, after about probably 50 plus rejections, a couple of people gave me some money. And at that point, I went full time. But it depends on what size business you want. Like if you want to have a lifestyle business that kind of in exchange for your time makes you some money, then that could be whenever. Like the time to turn it from a side hustle to a full hustle is essentially like a side hustle doesn't have to earn you millions of pounds. It could be your main thing just because you enjoy it and because it just about pays your bills. Or you could want a massive business and then you probably do need to raise some investment. So it's like a case-by-case thing. There's no one-size-fits-all approach. For me, with MyTutor, it was raising a proper round of investment.
And how about you, Lena?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think when I was younger and I had another business in between my hairdressing business in year 10 and the current business now, I started another business, which was a young entrepreneurs networking hub called Start Young Global. And what we did was just put on events for networking for young entrepreneurs and put them in touch with resources. And I quit my job to do that, but I was living with my parents at the time. I had no partner or sort of financial responsibility towards anybody else but me. And I didn't have any bills to pay. So I had the freedom to make that leap. Whereas this time with the business that I'm running at the moment, I'm still working part-time at MyTutor actually. And I'm just not ready to make that leap, and it's just not the right time for me to do that. So I think it's very important for you to assess it on the basis of what's right for you as an individual, and not because I know there's loads of like talk on social media. I see it all the time that if you don't risk everything for success, then you must not want it as desperately as everyone else. And I used to subscribe to that, but I think it's a very dangerous ethos because it's just different for everyone. And just because you're working part-time as well as building your business, it doesn't mean that you want it any less or that you're fighting for success any less. So it's just about deciding when it's right for you.
That's very, very sound advice. And now I know I said last 20 minutes, but everything that you guys have been saying has been so useful. But in these last 10 minutes, Emily here has been keeping an eye on our questions. Emily, do you have any of our audience questions which you'd like to ask?
Yes, I do. I've been hiding away behind that black box, but I've been reading all your questions. So quite a few people have asked similar things around like, where do you start? How do you know who to approach? And particularly when it comes to things like funding. So I imagine it's quite different for someone like you, Daisy, running a social enterprise. But maybe Tim, I'll jump over to you. Like, how did you find investors? Where's a good place to start?
So I think I'm actually the worst person to, because legit every single investor I've had was just been through like a weird circumstance which you just can't replicate. So like my first ever investor was actually before I started uni, I wanted to work at a company called Bowhurst during my gap year. And he said, we don't employ, like, basically go to uni instead because we much rather prefer people with degrees. But then when I started Fanbytes, I then went to him and he and I were just friends. And he said, oh, actually, let me put some money in and then I will, and then through that, I knew someone. So don't follow my path because there's absolutely,
right, so you were
actually follow it.
Yeah, so you were just good at all the networking then. How about James? Did you have to graft a bit more than that? What would you advise?
Well, I think Tim still makes an interesting point, which is that often like investment can come from where you don't expect it. And so you really have to rack your brains, because a lot of people say, so one fallacy is like this idea fallacy that Tim talked about of like, I don't have a good idea, so I can't start a business. Another fallacy is I don't know any investors, so I can't start a business. And that's also bullshit. Excuse my French, but I really do believe that in any circle, like you're probably only like one or two introductions away to finding someone who could be really valuable for your business. And so just because you don't know anyone in your direct circle, maybe a friend of yours has a mum who's like a really successful businesswoman, or maybe you get connected through a LinkedIn post. You reach out to someone who says something really inspiring because they've been on a journey that you're about to be on. And you say, you know what, I'd love some advice on these specific things. And that turns into a conversation that leads to an investment into an idea you have. So my journey was in a similar way to Tim's. Like, it was a mix of structured, like, here are some people I know, here are some investment firms that I want to reach out to, but also like just having the courage to go and get a meeting. And there is so much, like, back to what traits make a successful entrepreneur. One of them is like a bias for action. Like, are you the person who reads something and says that's inspiring? Or are you the person who reads something and reaches out to the person who wrote it and say, I'd love to learn more because you say so many great things? Like, I think the entrepreneur or the enterprising person is always the person who just does it, doesn't think about it. And yeah, that would be my one piece of advice.
And the other thing, probably at this stage, So at this stage, one of the things that, so there's two things. The first one is that you don't need investment in order to start a business. Like that is just the biggest crap that you ever hear. It just doesn't make sense. Because in most cases, I mean, just very easily, if you want to get money from investors, if you say, I need your money in order to start this business, then you suddenly look like you desperately need them, which therefore means they will say, okay, I want to take more of your business. So even if you do get that funding, you end up basically having given away so much of your business that you wouldn't even want to run the business anymore. But the point I was going to make was, the second point is looking for investors. There's so many places there, but I would actually say one of the easiest place would be off your business. Go and look at who are the top 10 biggest businesses in your space. And then through LinkedIn or email, talk to the people who started those businesses. Because the odds are, if they're big, they have money. And if they are willing, if they know the space quite well, they'll go, yeah, maybe I should, back this younger company, because I'm more from like the old school way of thinking and they've got the new school. So this is a way that I can be part of the new school. So that's another way to do it. But I definitely echo, James's point that you don't need investment to start a business. Like it's just don't do that.
Nice. It feels like networking and curiosity are themes that are coming up a lot tonight. Yeah. And also slightly touching on that with when you're starting out, and Daisy, I'll chuck this one to you because you mentioned sort of relying on people around you for the skills that you don't have. This question is, how do you get people to work with you for free at the beginning when there's no financial income?
Yeah, it's really tricky. And I think as an organization, we have a bit of a policy, which is that we try to almost never ask people to work for us for free, which at the beginning is quite hard. I would say you don't necessarily need people to work for you. It's about going for coffee with people. It's about asking for a phone call with people. It's about getting advice and gathering insight from people, I think. First, like Lena was saying earlier, and I think we've maybe all touched upon this, you end up learning stuff that you never thought you would. Like I never thought I'd be able to build a website, but I did. And I had a conversation with someone who had done it, and I did a load of research. I Googled so much. I spend so much time on Google. But I think it's about... I think it's about a combination of things, asking people for advice and then going through a journey yourself of learning how to do something. And then it's also about finding people who share your vision and your passion and are equally excited about what you're doing, because if you're excited about something, the chances are there'll be someone else out there who's excited about it too. And that's probably the best way to get people on board, I think. That's probably one thing, but I'm sure other people might have thoughts on that as well.
Just to add to what Daisy was saying, I think like something that Tim and I have both experienced is being part of this entrepreneur network, and it's called Founders, and it's got about 350 odd like people who are going through similar problems every day, and I have got so much value from that group, where any question I have, whether it relates to marketing, tech, fundraising, like I'll just throw it to the group, and people are so generous with their time. Like if I were looking to understand like how to run an influencer campaign through MyTutor and gain more students, I'll go straight to Tim. And Tim, I'm sure, might make up some way that you might ask me for advice as well. But it would be reciprocal, and you build these reciprocal relationships where if you want something for free, try and add value to the other person too, because you're talented, you'll have your own skill sets. Like what can you do that makes their life better as well?
Nice, thank you. So we've got 2 more minutes left, so it's probably time for one more question. And Lena, I'll shoot it over to you. So this is from a parent in the chat. Obviously we've spoken about you don't necessarily need an idea if you've got entrepreneurial spirit, but what if it's the other way around? So this mother has a teen who's super artistic and talented but lacks confidence. Do you think you need to be self-driven to be entrepreneurial, or do you think that the talent or skill alone is enough?
I think you do need to be self-driven, particularly at the start. I mean, it's such a difficult journey. It has been for me anyways at the start of building a business, and there's so many problems and moments that you come across that can be quite disheartening. And if you don't have that self-drive, and if you don't have that self-belief, those moments might stop you in your track. So I do think that that's an important thing to have. But on the subject of confidence, I mean, I've struggled with confidence a lot when it comes to building my business and putting myself out there. And what's helped me is my network. I mean, James has just mentioned the network that he's a part of. And I'm a part of a very small group of network of, it's literally just us girls around the same age group, around the same stage in our business, and finding those networks. And you can find them on Twitter, on social, on Facebook. There's loads of places where you can find those groups. It's incredible how much leaning on that network has helped me with my confidence and my self-belief. And it's realizing that a lot of entrepreneurs go through that too. You're not alone when you question yourself. You're not alone when you struggle with self-doubt or imposter syndrome or whatever the case may be. You're literally not the only one. So those networks have helped me build my confidence. So I would definitely, advise anybody to join a network like that, to get that confidence and that self-belief and that self-drive. And
also, just, I know we're out of time, but just on that point, to the person who asked that question for the daughter, so the advice I'd give on that is just to start really, really, really small. Just start like really, really, really small. So they may have this big grand idea, but self-confidence just comes from, self-confidence comes from being able to say, I've done something like this before. So people are absolutely scared of public speaking because they haven't done it enough times. But when you've done it about 3-4 times, it then becomes like, oh, well, this is pretty easy. And that I found to be the reason why people, struggle with confidence, is because they go, oh my God, there's this big thing and I have no clue how to handle this big thing. So the way to solve that is to just make it really, really small. So rather than how do I build a £1 million business, or how do I even get to, I don't know, 10 grand a month, like go, how do I make £100 a month? How do I then make like £1,000, or even that? How do I make like £300? And all that does is give you confidence as the type of person who can make £100, who can make £200, etc. So I think to your daughter, I would really, really actually encourage her to almost think about what is the smallest impact or the smallest movement I can have on my idea. And that would just give her a lot of confidence to go, okay, so I've done this bit. Okay, that's nice. So now I'm going to do this bit and do this bit.
It's all about the incremental steps, just like James was saying at the start.
Yeah, exactly.
Baby steps.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all very much. I'll hand over to you, Mariota, to say your goodbyes.
Thank you. Just thank you so much, Tim, Lena, Daisy, James. You've all offered like such valuable insights. I feel like if I'd heard any of this when I was 15 or 16, I'd be really well set up. And thank you so much to everyone who's attended as well, for asking all your questions. I feel like this has been like such a valuable evening. And yeah, it's awesome. So give yourselves a round of applause. And yeah, thank you so much. And good night. Just to note before everyone goes, we'll send out the recording of this webinar so you can watch again.
Cool.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks everyone.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.